Hmm. I wonder why it keeps saying that I need to change some Twitch settings. Cool. Right. Started a bit early. Just gonna sort of settle stuff into this. You know, it's really chill at the moment. Well, I'm saying that. I'm pretty chilled out today. You know, back at work again, but... Oh, hello. It's, I'm doing good, thank you. Pretty relaxed on a Monday morning. Well, not Monday morning, Monday afternoon. Cool. I'll get to that when I finish the stream. So it will take probably about 2 hours, but I'll follow. Yeah, I'll make sure to follow. So yeah, I'm trying to think about what happened since we last did one of these. I think the biggest thing is and on Twitter I posted about this. Sorry, on X, but I did finish the Lost Mines of Fandelver thing, and honestly, I it's probably one of the best D&D series that I've like watched ever. I mean, and that's saying something because there's several that have like actually like they were the reason I actually started playing D&D. But this one was hilarious. Everyone in it was hilarious in their own way. It wasn't. It was funny, but it also kept to like it. One of the ones I'm watching after that, the Goblins of Io, is pretty funny, but it has like no direction to it. It's literally like herding cats. Whereas whereas this one, it felt like with the Lost Mines, there was funny moments, of course, and when they happened and when they wanted to go on a tangent, they would go on a tangent, but they didn't have a. They did have one of those things where you know they whenever there was like a situation where it felt like they hadn't done too much, there was always a quest there ready, right? Anyway, let's start this whole thing. I feel like I should talk while also playing, because why not? Boom! I'm surprised I didn't say it was waiting for capture. So yeah, I finished that, and the ending was, I mean, it was a bit. I mean, I can't say that the ending was incredibly satisfying, but I didn't leave going. I didn't leave going that I feel like I've been cheated out of an ending or anything. So it wasn't really a climatic battle. Without keeping it vague in case any of you want to watch it, it wasn't a climactic battle where like, you know, they were. It was really close, and you know they had to pull out all the stocks and use all of their abilities. They kind of just they found out this combo, and it just really was really effective. You know. So yeah, that happened, and honestly, I've heard stuff because technically they're not finished if they continue doing the sort of module that comes after Lost Mines of Fandelver called Fandelver and Below. Um, but looking at it, and from what I've gotten from like comments and stuff like that, it's going to be like 6 months before they do that. And there's a part of me that's a bit annoyed that it's going to take that long before something comes out. But there's another part of me that feels like maybe I'll have forgotten a lot of it, and I could watch it again. But when they say that they're starting up again, and I can like sort of get at least some of the experience I had before. You know how some people talk about like, God, I wish I could forget everything and like, well, forget ever watching this movie, and then watch the movie again just to get that feeling again. Obviously, I can't completely do that. There'll be points in where I'm like, oh, I remember this, I know what's going to happen. Um, but I imagine that I could watch that again in 6 months and get a decent amount of fun out of it. As I mentioned in this conversation, I also started watching because that was my first instance of the world of IO. Well, specifically Brett, because this wasn't in the world of IO. This is a module, so it's set in the Forgotten Realms. But it was my first instance of Brett's sort of like channel, and so obviously because of how much I absolutely loved what I had already watched, I thought, well, then this is perfect. I'm gonna give. Almost made a mistake there. I'm gonna give. Oh, I really made a mistake there. Well, I guess I'll take the coin. I guess I'll give a bunch of his other stuff a try, right? And so I started, because it was this. It seems like a lot of his other stuff is in this interconnected like world called the world of IO. I started. Oh god, this dude's got a better demon build than me. I started watching some of the other stuff in his catalogue, and because I didn't want to miss out on stuff, I checked all the playlists and I went to like the earliest one. And I'm not 100% sure because I was still looking up stuff, but it seems like there's 3 seasons to World of IO, but the first season was mostly offline games or like privated games. But I started watching one of his earliest ones. I don't think this is his earliest one, because I think that's like, I don't know, Astral Academy, or it was called like, there was another one that was called Miss something, Miss Dreamer or something. I think that one's the oldest, of his sort of series. That's like a public playlist that you can do. But yeah, I started the Goblins one mainly because I looked over the lists of people in it, and there was Jesse Cox, who I've sort of watched a lot of his stuff sort of on and off for maybe 10, maybe even more than 10 years. He's always been in the periphery, like not somebody I watch incredibly regularly, but somebody who like every couple months something will come up about one of him doing something, or something big that he's doing, and it will be one of those things where I will sort of go back to watching his stuff. And so I was like, okay, I really like him. And then there was Krendor, who is just those two together are like an incredible comedy duo. And so I was like, okay, that sold me. And also I had Tomato in it, who was in the Lost Mines one, which was quite cool because I've watched him now decently experienced at D&D, and going back to seeing him effectively never played D&D before, or at least very little D&D. It was interesting to see the difference in, I mean, his comedy and his character, like playing his like character developments and stuff was incredible. Like he hasn't changed in that aspect. But it was interesting to see effectively just him with a lot, you know, coming at it as like a, you know, new to the thing. Um, Overall, I don't like this one as much as I liked the Lost Mines of Fandelver. Which, in fairness, isn't like a huge demerit on the actual like quality of this game, because although I don't like it as much, I still think it's very, very good. And like it's hilarious. It's just I think Lost Mines of Fandelver was just, I happened to pick one of, if not the best ones. So I've been making my way through that. I think I'm on episode 3 or 4, probably 4, and it's been fun. It's been very, very fun. It's a lot more chaotic, as I mentioned before. So there'll be situations where, like, you know, like most of the time it would be with Lost Mines 1 that they'd have a quest, they'd be doing the quest, and there'd be occasional, like, let's decide to do this instead for, like, you know, for maybe half the session. Little sidetracks. This one, they're all playing goblins, as the name suggests, and they're all making like snap decisions. Like they're playing it sort of half childish. I think there's only one person that has a positive intelligence score, and so they're playing themselves off as dumber. I mean, it says something when the first boss fight that they dealt with was a human, but it was just 2 goblins on top of each other. And so there is a charm to the comedy. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very funny. But I think in the situations with the Lost Mines, it would be funny, and then I would also have, like, there'd be a funny character, say like Gorgonzola, who's just this dude who happened to be there when somebody just died, and because he was so uncharismatic and he looked so ugly, they all thought he was the one who killed him. And like, that's a stupid concept, right? But it works. It became such a funny character, and it really was like a character that I remember from that show. Like, even though he's not in it for a huge amount of time, trying to keep it vague here in case you want to watch it, he had a huge impact, which meant that even though, like, he's very, very memorable, right? So, yeah, I think in addition to having the whole him being a memorable character, he also had a situation where, like, there were very, very, like, emotional moments, and you got invested in the character. And this is over a couple episodes. This is over like 6 hours. Whereas with these characters, I get the comedy. The comedy's still there. It's still quite funny. But I think it's not contrast with any, like, emotional moments. And so because of that, it kind of comes across as, like, it kind of comes across as being fun, but, like, I don't get invested in the characters as much, you know? But it's been interesting to see. There's been, interestingly enough, obviously, this is very old, this is like 2-3 years ago, this whole thing I'm watching. The whole Goblins thing. But there's a lot of complaints in it about Jesse's character. More specifically, that he's effectively, like, this isn't supposed to come across as mean or anything, because it's the character that he's playing, but he's playing like a child, right? He's playing a child character that has a goal, and he's incredibly selfish, the character. And there's a lot of people getting, like decently angry about it in the comments, especially in the earlier episodes. And honestly, in my opinion on the whole thing, I kind of feel like they're blowing it a bit out of proportions. But then on the flip side, I look at it and I go, okay, if I was in that situation, if that was me in that situation, would I be saying that? And honestly, to answer that, I don't think I think I would be getting quite pissed. But I think someone brought up a really good point in the comments, though. They were about it because, like, look, he's playing a character. He's selfish. He's childish. He's calling people derogatory. Well, not derogatory. That's the wrong word to use in this context. He's calling people mean things, right? Which is not. It's not like something that if I heard that on a regular person, I'd be like, no, this is a horrendously bad thing to be doing. This is one of those things where I'd be like, you need to make sure that you come at this and be a lot more nice to the people in your game. Be civil. I mean, at the end of the day. But if someone brought up a good point where it's like, if it hasn't been brought up to the others, then they are like, if they're not saying anything themselves, do not project yourself into that situation. They're all professionals. They've all been in it for a long period of time. They've all come into this campaign assuming it's going to be chaotic, right? And because of that, none of them are complaining, because if they were, things would change. They're all professionals. They're all adults. They're not just going to stand there and effectively take it if they're having a problem. And so it's probably fine, right? It was a thing that, like, it seemed obvious. I mean, going off topic, that was not a great start, but I didn't pick a lane. I didn't have a lane until much later, and I think everyone had taken the best, like, the growth threats at that point. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where after I heard that was like that suggestion, I was like, well, of course, this makes complete sense. I don't know why I was thinking like this. Of course, if it was a problem, they would, people would go out of their way to mention it. I mean, they're all professionals here. And what's funny enough is I was watching another one of his things, one of Jesse's things. This would have been a couple of weeks ago. He was doing his Geekenders, which I've posted about this on Twitter before, but also a show that I think a YouTube thing that you should definitely give a shot, especially if you liked the old co-optional podcast thing that he used to do with Dodger, because it's him and Dodger effectively making their spiritual successor to it, where they just talk about anything they want to do related to effectively nerd culture. And I personally think it's very, very good, and so I would give it a shot. And they had somebody on, I think she's called that Bronze Girl, I think is her name. I don't personally watch her stuff, but I've seen some of her peripheral things that she's done with Jesse before, and I think she's quite good. But she was on, and they were talking about. I think they were talking about some Twitter thing he was talking about. He'd been in about story modes and taking time in a very climactic story, cinematic, to just thank followers and stuff. and it sort of went on to his sort of playing of characters in TTRPGs. And in that section, she brought up a point where it's like, when I play with you, Jesse, you are very, very good at playing a character that has their own goals and is quite headstrong in that, but not to overshadow other people's bits. So if they're wanting to sort of take the spotlight for their specific thing, you're very good at like stepping back, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think maybe watching this series that he's in right now, I think I'm sort of seeing that, because although he is, you know, he's sort of directing where they go, and like he's taking the head of the whole thing. You know, he's become the head of the whole thing a lot of the time, gaining followers and stuff. There's so many parts in the couple episodes I've done, like the 4 or 5 episodes I've watched, where he's like allowed people to do other stuff and taken like the supporting role. I think inherently what's annoying people, and I can completely understand this because I'm not going to act like it doesn't irritate me occasionally, is that his character, the character he's playing, is like a child in the sense that he's very narrow-minded, he's very sort of like tunnel-visioned, and so if he wants something, he doesn't care that he doesn't care about the other people there. And I think that kind of character is borderline impossible to play in a game like this without annoying people, right? I think it's one of those ones that I think that it's one of those ones that inherently is like, say, the really edgy character that's like the lone wolf that doesn't want to be part of a party. It's kind of inherently an antithesis to what you're supposed to be doing, especially in like D&D and stuff. Where it's supposed to be a group activity. It's supposed to be a party. It's supposed to be like, you know, you against the world, right? And there can be disagreements, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the characters have to agree on everything and they've got to like be this one happy family, but I think there's a difference between them being a happy family and them being like one taking so much of the lead that the other people sort of feel left out of the whole actual role-playing experience. And I don't think he's doing that. I think the character can come across like that a lot of the time. But I found it quite interesting. I'm sort of hoping, and I think there's been hints of this in the comments as well, that the story gets a bit more of like a purpose, like a direction that unites the group, because it kind of at this point is just them travelling around as a travelling circus with no overarching goal that the group believes in, right? But the characters are really, really good. Krendor's character, I mean, he's a master at like playing a character and not necessarily saying too much, but the things he does say always have an impact. You're never in a situation where he says something and you're not like, that's funny, or like that was, you know, like that was important. And he's always been good at that. It's always been an interesting contrast between him and Jesse. Jesse's character's okay. I think it's my least favourite character, but there is a part of me that believes that that's in sort of like an intentional thing. Not necessarily that he's trying to make a character that's horrendously unlikable, but the character inherently No, I guess he is. He's just trying to make a character that is unlikable because that's just inherently what that kind of character would be in that situation. But I think it's less of a problem because he's in a goblin party, and it's supposed to be like they're all, like dumb sort of like goblin characters. It's not necessarily supposed to be this huge like it's not necessarily supposed to be this like very intricate like sort of plot where there's intrigue and backstabbing and all that. It's supposed to be very much dumb goblins being goblins. And so I've been having a decent amount of fun with it. But as I said, it's not lived up to the level of Lost Mines. But that can always just be what's the word? It's the first one you watch, so you always think it's going to be the best, right? I always call it like the Doctor Who thing, because it's there's this thing where, like, I don't know how popular Doctor Who is in other countries and stuff, but it's pretty much a staple of sort of like British culture at this point. And there's always this thing of like, okay, which version of the Doctor is your favourite? Probably to talk about one that's probably a better example that maybe more people from different countries would know. It's the James Bond movies. You know how there's multiple instances of James Bond? Well, there's always that thing of like, okay, which is the best James Bond, right? Which is the best Bond? And it's always, for at least, I'd say like 90% of people, it will be the one that they grew up with. It'll be the first one they saw. And I think you have that with I think I could be having that with this series as well, because Lost Mines was the first instance of something I had watched of this DM. It might have blinded my it might be blinding me to the fact that it's not the best. Although I kind of feel like that's not the case, but I always got to put in that preface because it might be true. That might be the reason. But yeah, that's mainly what I've been watching since we last did this. It's mainly just been obviously finishing off Lost Mines and then starting this. I did most of the starting of Goblins over the weekend, just because I wanted to watch a couple episodes not at work, just to see if I'm even gonna like it, because I don't want to go into work and then have a situation where I start playing this going, okay, this is gonna be my thing, and then I play it. I play like a single episode, and I do not find it entertaining. And then I've got to figure out what I'm gonna watch for the rest of that day, and then maybe even the rest of that week. Already having planned it out to be this series, but I think it's very good. Don't get me wrong. I don't want it to come across as I hate it or anything. It's very, very good. So yeah, I did a bit of that. I played a bit of... I tried downloading Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because it was on the Game Pass. And I had played Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So I'd played the two other sort of RPG style games, and I know people who love Assassin's Creed will get on my case for this, but they're my kind of games. I like them more. I've always been an RPG boy, and these games sort of scratched that itch. Like, they weren't, I'm not going to say they were incredible, don't get me wrong, but that they were like exactly what I came in expecting. I expected to come into this to play an Ubisoft game, and in Assassin's Creed Origins it was set in an Egyptian sort of like society, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I get to learn about their myths and the sort of culture behind Egypt as well. That's exactly what I got. I went into Assassin's Creed Odyssey effectively wanting the same thing, but with my personal favourite mythology, Greek mythology. And that, again, that's exactly what I got from it. I think the problem I had with Assassin's Creed Valhalla is not that I didn't like the myths, because I'm not, I don't, it's not my favourite mythology, but it's, you know, I still quite like Norse mythology. I think I played the game and I was playing just on normal difficulty, and I just felt really sluggish. I don't know if that was just me, or maybe it's something related to my computer, because it's not perfect and occasionally it does get sluggish. But I was playing it, and I played it for about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and honestly, it wasn't incredible, in my opinion. I found it, I don't know, it was little things. Like, as I said, the sluggish combat, then I felt like with the keyboard, all of the buttons, at least for me, they felt like they were in weird places that I wouldn't normally put stuff. I don't know. I in the scheme of my life, I'm a pretty new PC like gamer. I used to use consoles for a long period of time, and it's only in the past, you know, like maybe 3 years, I sort of did more PC gaming, right? And I'm a slow learner, so I'm not the best at figuring out the, you know, quickly hitting keys around WAS and D, and they have a lot of keys, and yeah, it's a little thing, and it probably is nothing to most people, but that just, there were so many buttons and I couldn't quickly hit them. And then there was the whole sequence where you're in the boat, in the the Viking longship kind of thing, and that was fun. I did a similar thing in Odyssey, but I don't know. For me, I found, like, you do a raid, you go and attack a place and you do a raid, and that was cool and everything, and then I had to like back up my ship, and that felt really weird. Like it took me out of it. And so yeah, after a bit I just decided, no, this isn't for me. Like I think a combination of the controls and the sluggishness and, you know, just little things got on my nerves. And the thing is with me, and it's a stupid thing, and I know it's bad, but it's always been a part of my sort of it's always been a part of me, is that I really, really get hung up on very, very tiny things. Like, for example, I stopped playing a game called Tyranny, which is this like RPG that's got a really interesting setting where you're the bad guy, you're a minion of the bad guy, but the bad guy's effectively won, and this is the last area he doesn't own, and you come with this like message from the bad guy, and because he's so powerful, his like message is this powerful spell that locks down this whole area and says, okay, either you take over this place, armies that I've sent here, or I'm just going to destroy this place, because if I can't have it, no one can have it. And so it's you trying to you know, either choose a faction or corral both of the factions to sort of take over this place, or maybe rebel against the big bad within this sort of time limit. I thought it's a really cool concept, and it's this quite sort of short RPG. Normally it would be up my alley, but like two little things got on my nerves. One, I'm really not a fan of real-time RPGs. Never been a big fan of them. It's not necessarily any... I think maybe it's because I've just never been very quick on that, and it always feels like I'm missing out because of not something that I've personally had much of a control over. Because at the end of the day, this is just my reaction speed, and I'm, you know, how is it fair that just because my reaction speed isn't as fast as the other person that I get screwed over here? But yeah, that was one of the reasons that put me off of it. And the other one, such a tiny thing, it was just that I went into it and went, I want to play a mage. A lot of the time I play mages in these real-time ones if I have to play them, because a lot of the time mages are doing the backline. It's a lot less stressful a lot of the time. And it asked me to pick a weapon, and I was like, cool, I'll pick a staff. And then it asked me to pick a second weapon. And it doesn't necessarily mean I have to use the second weapon, but that annoyed me enough that after I played like 20 minutes, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And this is one of the reasons why I'm always so hesitant to buy new games. And it's why I kind of have these like I'd say there's three main games that I go back to and just comfortably play. And it's like Hearthstone Battlegrounds, Disfigure, and Loop Hero, and that's it. It used to be Monster Train, but I took that out of the equation because it was getting a bit boring playing the same build over and over again and constantly trying to force it. But yeah, I think I don't know, it's little things, tiny little things that will just stop me from playing a game, and it will take me out of it, and I'll just that'll be the end of me ever playing it. Because every time from then that I give it a try, I'd think of that one little thing, and it'll get on my nerves. And I think that's probably done it for Valhalla. The annoying thing about that is it took me like, my internet's not the best, right? I mean, my upload speed is so bad that I can't. When I was like figuring out how to do this sort of as a hobby, I looked up a tutorial, and it was like, if you have this kind of upload speed, you can stream all of your screen, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Checked mine, wasn't even close. So technically, I think I stream a screen that is slightly smaller than the normal screen, I think. And so yeah, it took me like blimmin'. I don't even think it's me like being like overestimating it by saying that I think it took me about maybe 8 hours of me constantly downloading this. And when I finally did download Valhalla to play it for half an hour and then decide that I'm never playing it again, it's one of those things that, like, I love the Game Pass for this, because if I didn't have the Game Pass, that would have been like for blimmin' 50 quid or something that I'd spent on that, and then I would have been in a situation where I go, oh, I don't like it, and I'd be in a bad situation there. Luckily, I just I pay like, what is it, like £8 a month or something, just for the ability to try them out and do that, and save me effectively. I've effectively saved myself like 50 quid by just trying it out here instead of full on buying it. But yeah, so I played that and I was like, okay, well, it's obvious that I don't like that one, but I do want to try out a new game because I got a bit disappointed when the Steam sort of like end of year thing came out, and I was like, I only played like 30 games over this year. That feels like stupidly low. And so I got a bit annoyed that I'd played so little. Not, not with anyone. I got annoyed with myself. And so I sort of, not like in any official stance, but I sort of decided that, okay, I'm going to make a concerted effort to play as many games, different games as I can. And I've got all these games from like bundles and stuff I've bought that I've just never given a shot, and I I put in the code for the sake of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to put in a concerted effort to do this. And so I was like, okay, what do I want to try? And I know this is going to sound stupid after talking about how I'm going to make a concerted effort to play new games, but I was like, you know what I want to play? I only got halfway through it last time, but I'm going to play through Pillars of Eternity 2. And so I downloaded Pillars of Eternity 2. That took about like 2 hours. So, bearing in mind I started wanting to play Valhalla over the weekend, and I've already spent 8 hours of that weekend downloading Valhalla, then another half an hour playing it, and then uninstalling it. Now another 2 hours on top of that to start playing Pillars of Eternity. I started going through the character creation screen, and I was having a lot of fun doing that. The races are interesting in that. The whole sort of the whole like idea and lore behind that world is very interesting. And it doesn't scare me as much as some other stuff is, because it's effectively just sort of a generic sort of fantasy sort of skeleton to it, but they just do a lot more to make it their own unique thing, right? So that happens, and I sort of go through all the classes, and this is where it starts to, I guess, unravel. This is where it starts to I start to realise that, oh, maybe I've made a mistake here. Because I start going through all the classes. And all of the, like, cool, sort of subclasses you could take. Where what it does is, like, you take a subclass, right? This is a really interesting thing they do. Where you take a subclass, and the subclass gives you bonuses, but it also sometimes gives you like a debuff. And so I thought this would be really, really cool, and I'm looking through them all, and then I realised that there's a reason I went for what I did last time, which was the shifter druid that specialised in wild shapes and stuff. And it's because I blimmin' looked at all of the others and went, none of these interest me. None of these are actually any better than... None of these are particularly interesting. And so I started looking through them all. And none of them really interesting me. And then I found a paladin that I liked. It was like a paladin, but it's like an undead paladin, because it's Sacred Blade, which was like a flaming... It's normally a flaming holy blade that does extra damage. Instead of it doing extra damage and like, extra effectively radiant damage, what it did was extra like necrotic damage, and this dude's just got a better build than me, if I'm being completely honest. But seeing as he's Kel'Thuzad at the moment, that means he's left, which means I could get all of his stuff if I don't die. But it injures me because it did necrotic and it also diseased them when you use that attack. And so I was like, okay, I'll give this one a shot, right? The thing I realised very early on was I'd made a mistake on my class. Because there's this thing they do in it. Which is, they have a whole thing of... How do you explain this? They have this whole thing of, like, if you're a paladin, right? And you see this in a lot of games and stuff. If you're a paladin, you have a bunch of principles that you follow, right? And these principles are whatever your specific oath is. And so I didn't realise, this is 100% my problem, I didn't realise that this oath that I'd taken was like, it meant that I had to pick more, if I wanted to be more powerful, I had to be more like devoted to what they believe in, right? And what they believed in was incredibly logical, incredibly aggressive, and that's borderline the exact opposite of how I like to play RPGs. I generally play a very nice person that tries to like persuade everything. Like I really love persuasion because all of the, I don't think this is particularly unique, but like all of the persuasion options are always like the funnest a lot of the time. To the point where it kind of feels like you need somebody who's heavy charisma in your like group. That's definitely true in the Baldur's Gate game, for example. And so I went into it and I was like, oh, I've already immediately made a mistake here, but I'll keep trying. I'll keep trying and I'll see if maybe I actually quite like it. But immediately I was just like, I do not like this. And so I immediately went, I'm not playing this anymore. I didn't uninstall this one. I didn't uninstall this one. Oh, third place isn't bad. My goal today is to actually get first once, which I think is unlikely unless I get to the bottom ranking. But yeah, I was like, I didn't uninstall it, but I did exit the game without saving even once. And do I regret it? Probably not, because I know for a fact that if I had continued playing that, I would have just been forcing myself. I know I would have just been forcing myself. Because I know that like little things like that will... I mean, I've stopped watching like D&D series because of tiny little things like that. It's one of the reasons I stopped watching it. It's been so long since I watched season 1 of High Rollers that I don't even remember why I stopped. But I stopped season 1 because of some decision. And in season 2, I remember stopping because there was a situation where they were dealing with a church. And they did a decision in this church that I really, really didn't like. And because of it, and the consequences of what happened, I just decided it put me off, right? And it's such a childish thing, right? And I acknowledge that I'm being childish, but I can't stop myself from doing that. It's it's something like that. Just I have no control. It feels like I have no control over, and I don't want that to seem like a cop out, but it's true. That's just how it is. And so yeah, honestly, that's really all I've been doing. I haven't been doing anything great. Weekend I thought a bit more about my character for D&D, for the campaign I'm gonna be in. I'm slightly worried with that character actually, because I worry a lot about. I don't want to be that guy who makes a character that restricts other people, and I worry that my character is going to be one of those people in the group that isn't sort of like upbeat and happy, and it's going to sort of bring down the whole. This doesn't feel like jazz, if I'm being completely honest. What's this under? Apparently it's Latin jazz. I'll give it a shot. I don't. You know how it is. It's like I don't want to be the spoil sport of the group, but in addition, I wanted to play a character that was like properly. I wanted to get as close to the overarching like story, which at the end of the day is saving somebody from a big bad. It's effectively someone who got kidnapped, and so I was like, perfect, I'm going to make a character that's like all about his main motivation is to save this person, and he's going to be no nonsense, and he's going to devote himself to that. And I worry that I've made a character that's just going to be horrendous to be in a party with, where people are like, hey, should we it'd be cool if we like stopped this and went and I don't know, went to the festival for a bit. I'd be like, why would I do that? I have this big goal I'm supposed to be doing. I worry I was like that in the previous campaign as well. I was playing a character that was quite like, he was a nice guy, but there was a situation where it was very obvious that he was breaking us away from the sort of the one continent that we did most of that arc in, and he was trying to sort of bring us into the wider world. So he set us off to this, across the sea, using this teleportation device, and we were dealing with a threat in a country that none of us knew about, right? And so, I was perfectly up for that, but then he sort of broke the news to me that the country that I'm from, that we had done all that stuff in, had just gone to blimmin' war with something, and I felt really bad because I just felt like my character would immediately drop everything to go help his country in the war, because they were a up and coming relatively new kingdom. It's not even really a kingdom, it's a collection of cities. And so I felt like I was dragging people back to Tutorial Island again, but I might have been overthinking it, but it's something I just really don't want to be doing to the party again. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm the one that's dragging people, restricting people. I've done it before, and this one I know was just a mistake, because it was my first time playing D&D, and I played a character in a setting, by the way, that was I was told it was very medieval in their opinions, in the sense that if you're not from a city, they're gonna look at you like you're a blimmin', a chupacabra or something. They're not gonna trust you, and they're gonna be very, very defensive around you. And so I played a character that was very much like that, but I bumped it up. I decided I would play a heavily religious person that was effectively an inquisitor, right? He goes around investigating quote-unquote heresy, and according to his religion, and he deals with it, right? I thought there was yeah, sure, I'm going to be a bit more discriminatory than the average person of this world, but I'm not going to be. It's not going to be huge, right? And then when the sort of campaign started, finding out that, like, for example, tieflings in this world were considered like literally devil spawn, right? As they are in a lot of settings people make. And my character was obviously very anti them, and he was like, he's blimmin' devout, so he's like, okay, they're devil kind. I am very aggressive towards them whenever I meet them. You know, borderline, like, give me a reason I will attack kind of person. And then I find out very early on, by the way, that yeah, my church very devout to this, but the people above my church, like my church is like a sect of a bigger church, and the person who runs the bigger church is a tiefling, like the head of the whole thing. And I don't know, I felt like my character in that situation was one of those things where, sort of getting back to what I was saying, like one of that character in that one was so restrictive, because I was effectively going, if you are anything but a human, my character inherently is going to distrust you, to the point where, like, if you're a tiefling, I was blocking off tiefling from people, I think, and I was incentivizing them to play something that would fit with my sort of my character's view. That's what it felt like. And so I've always tried to not put that on the group anymore, because I felt really bad about that after the fact. And so I'm worried that, sort of, because I've talked to my friends about characters they've made that effectively, for lack of a better word, have been like the straight man, right? The kind of people that they, in the party of everyone being like happy-go-lucky fun, they've been the dude who's been like, no, we should stick to this, we should stick to the mission, right? And they've always said to me that, like, when they've been role-playing the straight man, it's not been fun. It felt like you've been left out of all of like the funny hijinks. It feels like you're the odd one out, like you're the spoil sport. And it scares me a bit, but I want to play. This character doesn't make sense to be happy-go-lucky, and I want to push the boat out and play something I'm not normally done. And so this kind of character feels like the character that not only am I interested in, but I think would be a perfect sort of push in that direction, so that I can finally, like, try out a character that's like different enough from, like, me, for example, because a lot of my characters do just become me, as I've said many times. And so, I don't know, I'm hoping it'll go well, but I'm a bit worried about the whole thing. And also, I've got this sort of worry in my head that the backstory that I've made for the character, it's not very complex. I worry I haven't given too much for, like, the DM to use, because generally what the character is just somebody who... Okay, I'm turning this down slightly. Generally what the character is a character that, like, was part of a very, like, a family of, that were a military family, right? There's a strict hierarchy in this world, and they're part of a military family. And they've been part of this family for a long period of... They've been part of, like, this military class for a long period of time, to the point where they've become quite famous for it, right? Do you guys think this sounds a bit like Mario? To me, it sounds a bit like a Mario theme. Anyway, because of that, like the other people in his family have gotten like really, I guess, really like power hungry and like sort of noble. Like they think they're better than other people. My character isn't like that because he sort of idolized his grandfather who taught him all this stuff, right? And his whole shtick is that like they betray him at this incident, and he chooses to become an Oath of Vengeance paladin to avenge, like, effectively the honor that they have, both avenge his, like, the person they kidnapped, but also the honor of, like, his family's legacy that they've tainted with what they've done. And I don't feel like I've given I've given a villain, right, that he can use that would work for me. And I've given him my sort of a basic backstory, but I wonder if I've not given enough in terms of like stuff, like hooks and stuff to like for him to use. You know what I mean? I think one of the things I've realized is that I'm not very good when it comes to. I feel like I'm lacking a lot when it comes to backstory writing. I think, although I don't think I do badly, I think I have these like times where I have bursts of inspiration, times where I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and then it all comes to me. And I think I make something really good, but most of the time, like I'm just sitting there, like I feel like just making something quite generic. I don't know if, obviously, any time I've asked my friends, they've obviously denied it. But you know, I'll be honest. Even if I had a friend who was doing something incredibly, not incredibly bad, but if they just weren't that good, I would be like, it's fine, mate. You're overthinking it, right? And so I don't know. I don't know what the actual sort of like quality of it is. I've never been that good at creative writing. That's the thing. That has been a kind of like a sore spot for me. Although saying that, there's not a lot of stuff I'm like particularly good at, and so I do worry about that a bit. But I mean, I'm just hoping I can. The thing is, me watching all these D&D series has made me really sort of hyped up to play something, and so that's sort of the biggest thing that's going on in my mind at the moment. Is I can't wait to just be playing. I don't know how I'll do, but the idea of like the group getting together, it always feels weird when I don't have something on that day. On the weekend when I'm supposed to be, playing with my friends. It's always so weird when there isn't, that sort of just blank. And so I'm looking forward to sort of getting back into it. And although I might not be the best at it, I'm hoping it'll still be fun. I've always been very I think I've always been a big advocate of D&D, and I do wonder if it's been like to the detriment of like trying out other stuff. But for me at the very least, it's just always been that sort of easy sort of game that like no matter what, like I know that it's gonna come, like we're gonna have a good time playing it. Whereas it's not necessarily certain for the other TTRPGs. Although I don't know, I'll be honest. There's not very many I've actually played. I played some Dark Heresy, and that was really fun. That's one set in the Warhammer sort of verse. That one's really interesting. I think the combat's really interesting, if maybe needing cooler abilities, but I understand why, because it's not as focused into combat as D&D is. And I've played a bit of Lancer, which is a mech one. I think that one was really interesting. I think that's maybe the first one I've played that I've finished it and gone. After one session and I've finished it and gone, this is a good system. I'd love to play this again. Although I don't know if I like all the fantastical stuff that one group has. You know, where it's like, you know, you have. I'm a bigger fan of mechs where they're a bit more down to earth and a bit more realistic, right? I want the dude to have big guns, but not necessarily all of the fancy like blimmin' laser weaponry, or you know, all the stuff you'd see in like a Gundam and stuff. But like, and for the most part, that is what Lancer gives you, except for there's like one group. And all of the things are based on like mythological animals, so it's like the Gorgon. Well, I guess not mythological animals, mythological creatures. You got like the Gorgon. You got like Lich, I think is one of them. I think one of them's called Minotaur, and I think those ones, for me at the very least, don't interest me at all. And some of their abilities feel like they sort of take me out of the world. Like it makes me feel like, oh yes, I'm not. My character isn't a dude in a mech just in like this like war-torn country or something, or whatever the setting is. He's a dude in a Gundam fight, right? I don't know if that makes sense. I'm sort of saying what I feel at this point with this stuff. But yeah, I played a bit of Lancer. We've tried out other stuff. But like, for example, GURPS. People always rave about GURPS, right? Because it can do anything. But I think the problem with it is specifically that you can do anything, right? With GURPS, it doesn't have any specific rules to it, which is, I don't know, I find a bit more of a demerit in my opinion. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to just playing some stuff. It's a while away, right? I've always been stressing with my DM that he needs to take his time, make sure he likes and knows like the world he's making and the story he wants to do before, you know, sending it our way. Take your time, you know, that kind of stuff. But it'll just be nice to have something on the weekends, right? That it's definitely there. Yeah, I don't think we're getting the win this time, boys. I don't think we're getting the win. But I think we did okay here, especially since I feel like I'm never the best when it comes to the beast groups. I understand it to a certain extent, but not a huge amount. So getting something like this was pretty decent. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's happened. Streamed some more Rogue Trader, which is a point actually. If you're one of the people that's been watching the Rogue Trader sort of gameplay playthrough I've been doing, I was talking to my friend who's played a bit of it, who pretty freaking smart when it comes to these games. He always seems to be able to find like a really cool and interesting build. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have hit reroll. You know, he's always been that kind of person that's been able to like go through all of the different abilities and find one that like, you know, makes him really powerful. And he was talking to me and I was watching him play a bit. Nothing spoilery, but like just he's a bit further ahead than me. And he was telling me about how he was showing off his Sister of Battle. The Sister of Battle lady. And if you've been watching it, I chose the bounty hunter one for the Sister of Battle, and he took the, I think it's called the something militant, and I looked at it and I read it and it was all about like switching weapons, so I was like, this makes no sense for the character, right? Apparently, completely wrong. It's not to do with loads of switching of weapons. It's to do with specifically shooting her gun, bursting her gun a load, which, if you've been watching, is almost entirely what I do with her. And so, honestly, I'm slightly annoyed because with myself, really, because it was probably something I just obviously missed. But in addition, I'm slightly annoyed now that I went her down Bounty Hunter, because Bounty Hunter was just the best of the worst for me. It was the one that I thought, I didn't necessarily think it was incredible. I thought it was just the only one that felt like it would have some use. And so finding out that this one that was there that felt like specifically made for the way I'm playing her really annoyed me. But I looked it up and you can respec her. There is a respec situation. I apparently just got to go to this person and ask my character to have more training or something, or my team to have more training, and so I probably will be doing that with her, just to give her the class that seems like it's made a bit more for her sort of style. In fairness, I should have checked the first abilities on each of the sort of the subclasses before doing anything. I don't know why I froze this. None of these are good. But yeah, I'm a bit annoyed in that aspect. Let's do this. Why not? It's a waste of money, but I'm at that point where I'm like, I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to make this better. Like, this dude's good. In fact, he's probably better than that guy. That's really good. You know what? I think this is better. I forgot it also gets the buff. Anyway, yeah, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, I'll probably be respecking her. It just feels like normally I wouldn't use like information that I found outside of the game to change up my build, because I'd just be like, well, this is my build. But it very much feels like the subclass that she got, like the one that he chose, is just so much more made for like my character. Like, it's so much more made for the sister, and so it feels like I would be doing a disservice to not take it. It's like if I was playing like a medieval RPG, and there was a guy who used a big sword, and there was a subclass called Big Sword Guy, and I didn't take it. I would respect to take Big Sword Guy on the Big Sword Guy. And so I probably will be doing that. I'm quite looking forward to Rogue Trader. I think the thing is with it is, although I understand that it's probably not the best to get new people watching because it's a long form RPG, and I'm sure there's many people that, they haven't played it through, and so when they see somebody who's already half the way through, they're like, well, I'm gonna get spoiled. I don't want to watch this, and I don't have the time or the particular interest in this person I've just started watching out of interest, um, to go through his back catalogue and watch all of his VODs. Especially now it's getting to like the point where you'd be having to watch like probably like 12 hours of content to get up to where I'm up to now. And so I'd understand why people wouldn't want to do that upkeep. And I understand that there isn't a huge amount of people that have watched the things, obviously, because I'm not exactly a big streamer or anything. So I can understand why people won't watch it as much, and I'm sure if I was coming at this as purely like a business venture, it's probably not the right thing to be playing. And stuff like this, the more sure, let's see if I survive by giving myself a bit more armor. Stuff like this, where I'm coming into a game and the game is a game that you don't need to know the lore for. You don't really need to know how the game works, but so there's no like upkeep that you need to know. Before coming into this, right? So I as much as what I've said is probably true, that game is so interesting, and I know for a fact that if I didn't put it on a weekly stream, I would very quickly stop playing it. There'd be some little thing like that reactor bit where randomly just 3 chaos spawn appeared, where I would be sitting there and I'd be going, okay, this has annoyed me a load, I don't want to play this game anymore, and I wouldn't have that incentive to go back. Whereas like while I'm streaming it, I know for a fact that I'm going to go back to it because it's there on the schedule, unless something huge happens. Like, I know for a fact that if I'm in a situation where I'm like, I give up on, say, Rogue Trader, for example, it has to be something big now. I've invested so much and it's on the schedule, it's a huge thing. Now, saying that, while watching my friend, he did show off the fact that apparently this is a normal thing for this developer's games, but the longer you go into the game, the more apparently glitches appear. Little things like, we've already come across one. If you watch one of my previous streams, you'd see that like it just didn't tell me what one of my abilities features did. Ooh, look, I got that. By the way, getting second there was insane, and it was almost entirely because we went beasts, and we also had that incredible ability that you get off Greybeard or something, whatever his name is. Oakbeard. I think it had Grey in the name. But yeah, some of we've already seen one of them. I'm going to take AFK. Let's try it out. Why not? I don't have too much hope. But I think, yeah, that's one of the things that might make me stop. If it's something major, right? Because he was showing me. All I've had at this point has been like little features that haven't appeared. but he was showing me ones where it was like he would try it would be a deal, and the deal would show like what he would get, and then instead of gaining what he would get from it, he would lose the equivalent. Like it would say +2, let's say +2 security or something. It would instead give him -2 security and just screw over his planet. And so if there was things like that, I could see that wearing me down to the point where I stopped playing it, right? But I feel like people would understand it if that was the reason why I stopped playing it, because I think that's a completely like a normal thing to just take you out of the game. What annoys me is, and this is with a lot of RPG sort of like game developers, and this isn't supposed to be a jab at them, but I feel like it is true. And it's hard to argue. Say if we take Rogue Trader, and we take, say, Game of the Year Baldur's Gate. If you look at the track record and of like Larian Studios, and I think honestly the same with Owlcat, they have this thing of, in my opinion, they put a load of stuff at the start, and it's really, 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 really good. And then the longer you go on, it's obvious that less and less work has been put on it. And so you have an obvious situation, at least in my opinion, where everything's very heavily front-loaded. And I know why they've done that. I think it's a tactic that's done in all forms of media. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, right? Fuck, that one? That one? Steal random one. Rolling the dice. Ooh, I'm going max. Yeah, that's probably better. I'm going max, it seems. Max have decided to bless me. But yeah, I think I've heard differing things about Baldur's Gate, but my experience with Larian Studios is both Divinity 1 and Divinity 2. And both of them I feel like were quite heavily, like noticeably, front-loaded, in my opinion. To the point where I felt like I felt like to the point, especially with Divinity, especially the second one, a second Divinity game, it felt like the game became, especially in the final act, it became like a game that if that was the start, I wouldn't play. Which, I don't know. I understand the. Don't get me wrong, I loved Divinity 2. But I really. My excitement for that game was incredibly high. It was 10 out of 10 at the start. And then Act 2 was maybe like a 6 out of 10. Like, it was a big jump down, right? And then Act 3, I would put so low. Like, I would put it like maybe a 4, maybe even a 3 out of 10. Like, it goes from the prison area, where every bit of it is blimmin' full of missions you have to do and interesting like story elements that you have to deal with, to the city, where there's not as much of that, and it's interesting still, but it's not incredible. It's not as jam-packed as it was. To like the weird, I don't know what you call it. It's like the weird island, right? And for me, it was a drag, in my opinion. It wasn't a particularly incredible experience. I'd probably go even more than that. I think it was not an. I was going through that hoping for the end, and it wasn't. You know what's funny about it is a lot of the time with those kinds of games, RPGs and stuff, when it gets to that level, when it gets to when you have so many different abilities, I'm kind of in that situation where I'm like, cool, this is really, really cool. I've got all these abilities, I can do so much, it makes the fight so much more interesting. But in this situation, I was just, it was fun, but I just had so much more fun, like, trying to beat the early prison on, like, one of the hardest difficulties, more than I had actually playing through the rest of the game. Because of how densely packed they made it. Seriously, like, every part of that was full of stuff, right? And I think you got a similar thing. You got a similar thing with many other sort of RPGs like that. But it's not normally that normally that big of a deal, right? And I'm not saying it's a huge deal now. I just think it's something I've noticed. And at this point, I'm just, I'm obviously, I may as well have just called this rambling about nothing, because that's effectively what I do here, right? But yeah, it was interesting. It was quite interesting looking at that stuff. I think I might have talked about this before, but I don't know if it was on stream. But watching the Lost Mines of Phandelver thing, and I know I keep going back to that, but blimmin' hell, it's the thing I'm watching at the moment, and it's my obsession at the moment, right? It kind of, for the first time ever, made me kind of want to do something in the Forgotten Realms. Because I think it made me realise that as much as, like, homebrew worlds are so cool and interesting because the DM has put their heart and soul into it, right? And so they know back to front everything about that world because, they've back to front have made that world. And in some cases, they've made that world asking for preferences from the actual players. So they've made stuff into that world canon that you wanted specifically. But I think there is a part of me that's like, that is really interesting, but there is a really interesting world that Wizards of the Coast has sort of built and made through every blimmin' module and every blimmin' book they've made, that makes a very interesting world that has like different realms, different places. Like, you can set something in one area and set something in another one and have a completely different sort of like idea and stuff with it. Like, I think it made me it made me interested in like being near the Red Mages of Thay, especially the new, I say new, it's not that new, it might be like close to a year old now, the D&D movie. I think that got me really into it as well. It got me really into the idea of it because it had like the Harper agents from like Neverwinter. It had like the nature sort of druid sort of like settlement. Had the red mages. It brought to life the idea of all of like the Sword Coast and everything, and it made me I guess, appreciate that they have actually put a lot of work into this over time. They put a lot of work into, you know, this world, and it would be interesting to play something in it. There's a little bit less freedom on the DM, and so I completely understand why many people don't do it, and I could completely understand why specifically the DMs I have would not want to do it either. But I do think it's an interesting sort of world, and I went from never wanting to, like, never even considering ever God, I'm certainly not gonna win, but I'm gonna make it hell of annoyance to to kill me. That's actually my favourite kind of play style. It's like, you're not gonna beat me. Well, you're gonna beat me, but you're not gonna. It's gonna take you a while. Anyway, yeah, I've gone from never ever considering wanting to play something in the Wizards in like the Sword Coasts to I could see myself doing it thanks to the D&D movie and actually watching somebody play through it like a module, playing through the Lost Mines. It very much changed my like perception of the whole thing. And you know what? I'd be up for it. But then again, I'd be up for literally anything. I think that's one of the things I was talking to one of my friends the other day about D&D, because I mean, at this point they've had to resign themselves to whenever they're talking to me having to mention D&D at some point. Which I am really sorry about, but there's nothing I can do. But yeah, I was talking to them about it, and I was bringing up the fact that although I rave about D&D, I am being serious when I say that if there's any form of setting, I will give it a try. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say I'm going to like it. Don't get me wrong. As you've probably guessed from hearing some of my stories about some of the games I played and little things that have annoyed me to the point where I've never played the game again, I'm not exactly I am a picky person. I'm not exactly like an open person when it comes to that stuff. But I will give it a try. It's one of the things that I started actively trying to make an effort to do. Ever like I'd say maybe 4, maybe 5 years ago, just so that I could make sure that at any point I wouldn't be missing out on something. So I'll give anything a try. Although I'm a bit worried about ever playing Pathfinder, because by playing their games, I tried playing Pathfinder Wrath of the what's it called? It's the Pathfinder 2 game that was made by the people who made Road Trader. I tried playing that game, and oof, I definitely gotta say, it's one of those games that I played through a decent amount of it. I think I got through the opening act, and the second act of it. And I'll be honest, I got to this, there's this city, this like demonic city. I got there, and I was doing almost no damage to the enemies. There'd be like one enemy, I'd surround it with all my guys, I think I was using all my abilities correctly, and I would just not be doing well. And I think it was because of two things. One, I don't think I understood the rules at all when it came to it. Well too complicated for me. It's why I was kind of worried about playing Rogue Trader, because Rogue Trader, although it's not the same system, in fact it feels like a completely new system. I think I was worried that very quickly it was going to be similar, in the sense that I wouldn't understand anything related to it, and I would be in a situation where I was sitting there going, I want to kill this enemy, and I'm doing nothing to it. Or it takes so long and they're one-shotting me and I have to heal somebody every turn, you know? Because there was a point where that was happening. I really don't want to go pirates. I'm horrendous at pirates. But yeah, I think... I don't think I've gotten to that point in Rogue Trader yet. And this, by the way, the second reason why I think I did badly in the Pathfinder game is because I went into it sort of going like, okay, go into the combat. Whereas like I think what you're supposed to do is put a load of buffs on all your party and then go into combat, and that's for every combat. And I feel like that's just maybe not my style. I think I've realised I don't think it's my style, because I don't think that would be particularly fun for me. But yeah, I don't think that's happened in Rogue Trader yet. I think generally I've been pretty okay when it's come to... That's actually better for him. I think it's been generally better for me. I have been reading through the abilities very, very carefully, because I didn't want it to be one of those situations where I didn't want it to be in one of those situations where I just didn't understand abilities, and so would be in a situation where I didn't know what to do. I think I understand most of the abilities decently. I think there's the only ability I think I could confidently say I don't understand at this point is the unyielding beacon ability that Abland or however you're actually supposed to say it, Ablard, has. I don't really understand how it procs what it's doing, or how you get stacks for it. But I think that's it. And to have only one ability that I don't understand is pretty huge. I gotta say though, watching somebody I was watching my friend play through Rogue Trader. I just feel like I've messed up in terms of like builds, because his navigator is like his number one, like one of his number one DPSs, whereas my navigator just sort of sends out orders and that's it, really. But hey, I'm not having a problem, so I'm not really too fussed, you know. I think that's the big thing with me. I don't mind if my build is unoptimized if I'm still having fun playing it. I think that's always been my thing with it. I'm just worried when I get to a point where I'm being stopped by the fact that I keep trying the same tactic instead of looking back and coming up with a new strategy. Because I think that will happen at some point. I think I'm going to be in a situation where I'm sitting there and going like, okay, I'm going to do it this way again, and you're like, no, this is not. I'm sitting there going, say there's a big boss, got a load of health, and I'm going like, okay, well, I'll come at him, I'll do this, and where actually what I'm supposed to do is I'm going to sit back, read my abilities, make sure to do every one of them. Because I think that's a big thing as well, is that I think there's a lot of times where in the small combats where it doesn't really matter, I'm not really using my abilities a lot, especially the abilities I'm getting from the second subclass, right? And that's fine at that point, right? That's fine when you're just fighting basic people. But when I'm getting to boss fights, or like even just more challenging fights, just like elite fights that aren't necessarily boss fights but are more difficult fights, I need to be using those abilities like a lot more. I think the big thing that probably will get me to use abilities more is if there was some visual indicator that I've increased my damage by doing it, you know? I'm a child in the aspect of, if you give me flashy colours when I do an ability, I'm probably more likely to do said ability. In fact, I'm pretty sure I will always use said ability if it gives flashy colours. If I think about it for a second. There's very little I think I wouldn't do if you just put a load of flashing colours in it. But yeah, I'm worried a bit about that. But it's not a huge problem. By the way, with this game, I'm trying out undeads. I'm pretty good with undeads. I think I'm third best with undeads. I always have the same problem with it though, where I feel like I sort of run out of space and there's too many bits that I want to add to the build that I can't fit in the build. God, I think it's pretty funny that I'm seeing like, because obviously I've been around a while, right? I'm not exactly a spring chicken, and so there's a lot of people I've watched that are like, they're getting into their 40s, they're getting into their 50s, they're old school YouTubers / Twitch streamers now, and seeing them like interact with VTubers and stuff. With them, obviously VTubers not really being a thing when they started, or at least not being as popular. I'm not actually sure when VTubing was like technically like started, but yeah, it's very funny seeing them interact with kind of this new wave of like talent, right? There's so many people who have like become really famous, and they are. I'm gonna put him first because he's just a better version of him, I think. Except he doesn't do undead. Or he doesn't just do undead. But yeah, they're like a sort of a new wave of people. And what's even more funny is I was watching somebody called Ray, I think it's Ray Navarez Jr. Sorry if I messed up the second part. But he's an old school sort of YouTuber slash Twitch streamer who used to be part of Achievement Hunters, which is, you know, it was a relatively big name in the day, and it's still not small. And so he's been around for a while, and seeing him interact with a load of VTubers and stuff, who some of them like grew up with him, right? They're like, he's their childhood. It's so wholesome because he's a really nice guy, and there's no like hostility or anything. There's no prejudices or anything like that. It's just fun seeing. I think it's fun because it's kind of like people realizing that VTubers are like, it's not like a contained it's not a contained community where you can't, if you're part of that community, you can't sort of interact with other people who are part of that community. They're just, you know, it's stupid like that this is, I have to say this and it isn't obvious, but they're just, you know, they're just normal people that just for one reason or another have decided that they would prefer to use an avatar instead of using their actual face. Believe me when I say I don't blame them. I know for a fact that if I showed my face, it would probably be a demerit to my chances of getting people. It's one of those things where I can completely understand, even when it's not something like a couple of them have, where it's, you know, a medical condition or something. Even when it's not something like that, and it's instead just a personal preference, I can understand it, because I mean, I've never been particularly confident in my appearance, and why would I choose my appearance when I can choose, you know, this perfect version of what I would love to be, you know? So it was really interesting seeing the interaction between them, and I'm glad that there's sort of, I think there was a time where, it wasn't for a particularly long time, but at least in the spheres that I watch stuff, because I'm not a huge sort of VTuber watcher, right? Like, I think the only stuff I really watch that like has been like clips of Iron Mouse with Connor and stuff, because I like to watch Connor. I've never been a person who's very heavily involved in sort of the VTuber sphere, and so this is sort of in my sphere of like watching stuff. This is like their first interaction, and I feel like that would be true for a lot of people who watch the kind of like old school people that I watch, and seeing that, like, sort of breaking that wall down and making people realize that, yeah, it's not like you have to be part of a club or something, or like be part of the sphere to watch these people. These are just regular, very funny people. It's been fun to see that. It's been very fun to see it, and it honestly is one of the contributing factors to why I'm considering, when it comes to like one of my sort of resolutions, one of my like New Year's resolutions, which is to get an avatar, right? Get something to represent me, so hopefully people like So hopefully people can put like a face to the name at the very least. I'm considering, obviously, maybe getting a VTuber model, or maybe getting just even just a 2D, like a PNG for me. That wouldn't have happened, I'd say, a year ago. Maybe like a year and a half ago. I wouldn't even consider, if I was going to stream at that point, I wouldn't even consider streaming with an avatar of any kind. Because I'll be honest, I would have gone into it assuming that that's sort of a community that I'm not really part of, and it's separated. That it's its own group of people that I'm really not a part of. Oh. Okay. So I've just realised why, for the longest time, it's been saying Blimmin' Rogue Trader. Apparently, I put a moderation thing in, and it doesn't like that I'm calling myself a noob. That's what was screwing me over there. So, yeah. Me being stupid again. Me being blimmin' stupid in that aspect. But it's solved now. I know what to do. Don't call myself a noob anymore. Or, in a way that gets around moderation. Which, if I did that, I'd be happy that I was able to get around it, but then not happy that I can get past moderation that easily. But yeah. I'm glad I'm glad I caught that at least a bit of the way through. I mean, it's near the end, sadly, but at least now it won't happen again. Which is blooming annoying, because I literally put in the thing that I wasn't going to have this happen again. But what can you do? What can you do? I'm just sort of glad that, at least to a certain extent, I've caught the problem. Because if I hadn't caught the problem and I was still dealing with it, I don't know what I would have done. I wouldn't have been happy. Let's just say that. I wouldn't have been happy at all. I wouldn't have been... I'd be really annoyed. I'd be really annoyed. Cool. Okay, no, we're not having this on. We're not having this on at all. Look. I don't want that in it either. Look, I'm all up for fun and games. There's limits to my fun and games. I think, you know what the good side of finding out what that problem was? It means that actually I wasn't being an idiot. Rare time here where I'm going to actually compliment myself here. I wasn't being an idiot when it came to I don't think I want this anymore. I wasn't an idiot when it came to redoing my descriptions, because I had changed them, but it wouldn't update that. Let me double check it's actually updated. It hasn't fucking updated. What the hell? If this doesn't work this time, I'm going to be really annoyed. Successfully updated. I'm going to press this button again. Successfully updated. Now I'm going to check. It's there. I've pressed that twice now. I'm checking again. It's still there. You know what this does to me? It makes me annoyed with myself. Checking my thing. Hey, look, actually working. What an absolute incredible thing. But yeah, I've had it, honestly. Seeing as we're getting close to this, and this will probably be the final one. Like I said, I've had a good time here. It's been fun. There's a part of me that wishes I could have done like one of my goals today, but I wish that for every day, right? I had 2 goals coming into this. I had the goal I always have when streaming, which is I'd love to get somebody that specifically wasn't trying to either get me a get a Twitter follower from me, or was trying to sell me overlays. Come into the chat and just chat. And 2 was to get a win, like a first. And closest I think we got today was a 2nd place, which is a bit of a shame. But I mean, I've never spouted to be particularly good at this, right? Especially with Undead, where there's a part of the Undead sort of strategy which is all about sacrificing units, right? And I've never been particularly good at doing that. Never knowing really which ones to do, and whether sacrificing them and not having the stats on the ground would be better than... That feels like it's just an improvement. Would be better than having like just the effect on another creature. Obviously, the later you get with the game, the more it doesn't matter about the stats, because you'll have so many more things that you can do. But I've never been good at assessing that until you get much later, where it doesn't really matter anymore. I think that's the big thing, is if you have a look at the different tribes, right? The mechs are pretty okay, because even if you're a full board, you can magnetize stuff. The demons, I've always known how to play the demons, because you always just leave one slot open, and you just constantly put demons down to get the effect from you taking damage, and then your damage buffing your group, and then also buffing your 2 grow units. When it comes to pirates, I know you got to do a similar thing, but it's all about money. It's all about money and selling stuff, right? And putting stuff on the ground. But I've never, unlike with demons, I've never figured out the ones you're supposed to beeline towards. And with the undead, I don't really understand what the go-to strategy is. Like, I'm not really sure specifically how you're supposed to go about making sure your units are constantly growing, other than the obvious one with the abomination that grows for every person that dies permanently. It's the same with beasts, actually, because really the only way you play beasts, I don't think there's really another way of playing them, is you're banking on summoning a load of stuff from dying, right? That's just good. You're banking on like getting a load of stuff on the ground that like gets buffed by your oh, I want that. Because then I can play this, then play the big dude. I don't know if I'm winning though. I might die here. But, as I was saying, the whole point with beasts is you're supposed to summon a load of units from your units dying, and then buffing them with your units that just buff all the units that summoned, and then you slowly wear them down with these units, right? The thing with that one is it's always positioning so that you can have a full board, but you lose enough of your units that you can replace the units with more units, you know, if that makes any sense. With dragons, I've looked at dragons and I just never seem to find the units I think you're supposed to get. I don't understand modern dragons. You know what? That's better. I never understood modern dragons because they seem to have been going heavily into the unit that you play and it gives attack to another unit. But I'll be honest, I'm a bit confused with modern dragons. It used to be a bit more simpler. Murlocs, I have absolutely no idea. I know you're supposed to buff the units in your hand, but I've never been good at that. The Nagas just feel like they've gotten weaker because they've lost a load of their units that used to grow. And the Quillboars, I don't know, I feel like the Quillboars have gone a bit weird as well. What the heck is this? Oh! Oh, that's cool. I mean, I think you're going to win without that even getting a chance to do anything, but it's still a really cool unit. It just summons a reoccurring nightmare, who then would die and be able to summon another one. Wow, we survived that. That's such a rarity. And we got another of those because I just didn't see that before. Let's give a quick buff to everyone. I don't know how much that's going to do. Then we'll buff all the summon units. And then we'll buff all the summon units again. Although I think that actually buffs every unit, which is kind of cool. And then we'll play this. So, my thinking with Undead is you've got that unit that eats units, permanently killing them, but you get the effect, and the effect is permanent, right? Are you supposed to, like, take people like this and this guy, for the later game is what I mean, and just constantly eat these, giving buffs to your units through them dying? Because that feels a bit slow for me, and it requires you to constantly, consistently get that, right? Consistently get the unit you want to get. So I don't know how good that is, really, but you know what? This song sounds like Tiny Kangaroo. Anyway, I'm not going to sing the rest of that song because I might be completely wrong. You know what's interesting about this game compared to Disfigure is with Disfigure, there was a lot of moments in it, even though it's kind of a chill game, where I could sort of I would get like moments, I guess I'll call them clippable moments, right? Whereas this, I don't think there's many things you can clip in this, but I've definitely had a lot more fun with this game, I think. I think being able to be really openly just talking and not really having to concentrate too much on it, having those like, what is it, like 45-second breaks a lot of the time in between rounds where I'm just standing there and, well, not standing I guess, but you know what I mean, like sort of waiting around for everyone to finish everything, right? To a certain extent, I kind of wish this game had an end turn button that meant that when everyone had ended their turn, like it would allow you to it would allow you to just sort of go like, okay, everyone's ended their turn, let's start the rounds, right? I want a new hero power. Give me something cool. That's a cool one. Nice little buff. I like repeatable buffs. I really want to get a second one of these sore losers, which I worry that maybe... Oh, it's him. He's taking all my undead. I'm probably dead to this person, because they've been doing very well. And also, they're using pirates, and they were able to reroll their power into an ability that cares about pirates. That's really good. I don't know how likely it is to do that, actually. I've got to say, having these two, very useful. I think I underestimated these a bit too much, because they have a lot of attack, especially when buffed. And, I mean, giving 2/6, I mean, extra 6 health means that you could maybe survive a hit sometimes. And when you're getting like 4 stacks of that, I mean, that's an extra, what, like, extra, what, like 8? Oh, come on, quick maths. 824? Like, that's huge. That's a big amount. And then all of them also get the buff from this dude, which is, I think, a +6/+6. I think we're on tier 6. Oh, it doesn't even tell you how much. I could do a quick calculation, but it wouldn't be quick, so I would be lying to you. But yeah, this makes or breaks us, and I think that 200 and whatever that is, that's killing us. I think that's the thing that I've been seeing a lot actually in this game is I was more seeing it with you know that unit that's a demon dragon that consumes 3 units in the what's it called, like the tavern, the inn. I've been seeing that one a lot, getting to like insane numbers, like, you know, similar to this. And I don't know how they're doing it. Like with this one, I understand, because it's all about money, right? The amount of money that they make. It synergizes so well with it. But I don't understand how they do it with the one that consumes, because you've got to make them 3 units in the inn really, really, really powerful. Anyway, this will probably be the end for me. For the stream, not for me. I hope I'm not dying, but I'm really annoyed that we couldn't change the title because of a stupid little mistake. That's gonna get on my nerves for a while now, I'll be honest. We didn't get the win that we wanted, which is weird because I know I'm bad, but I have gotten wins, like not too much, but like not a small amount of times, so it's a bit annoying, but what can you do? But I've had a lot of fun with this. Hopefully you guys have, and I'll see you on Wednesday if you want to watch Rogue Trader, or next week playing whatever cozy thing I want to play on that day. This has been me.